Thank you very much, Richard, for being here in our Studio 305 office. Just a big thank you for your time today, Richard.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Very good. We're gonna have some issues, some mistakes that people for sure make. Also, foundational concepts like the credit basics, importance of this financial planning, so debt management. We're gonna talk about this investing and growing, the retirement part of the planning, the retirement. So how can we as young adults, as families, make these steps for retirement, and what are those mistakes in this life? We are going to deep dive into those mistakes. So real estate, we're going to talk about that too. Investing, real estate, tax mistakes, side hustles, and entrepreneurship as well, and these things. So, Richard, how is these beginnings with your career as a coach right now? Why is that this financial stoic? Why have you called yourself like that? And tell us this story. What about that?
Okay, sure. So for me, so finance is not my actual bread earning career, right? I'm a software developer is what I actually do for a career. But I've always been very in tune to my finances, personal finance. So I've studied personal finance for the last 25 years to optimize my own finances. And what I've kind of realized that for most people, it's a lack of preparation because the financial field is made extremely complicated. So my goal as a coach is to try to help people see how easy it really is to do your own personal finances, get good results without having to be some kind of a genius at personal finance. So the whole concept behind the financial stoic is that you can take it easy. You can be very not excited about how things have to work. You know, you can take it very easy about how you do be calm about your approach to finances and still get very, very good results. So it's about this sense of taking it easy and having a very tranquil approach to your finances.
Actually, this philosophy of stoicism applied to the finance. It's just the easy part, and this kind of mindset, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, Richard, and where can people get in touch with you? Tell us about that first.
Yeah, so I don't really have a website. I've got a single page where people can kind of get my information. They can send me an email or they can schedule a session with me, and that's at financialstoic.com.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Richard. We are as well, my 305 office.com, and this is the podcast. Well, in this case, foundational concepts. Richard, how can we avoid these mistakes on our credit? Tell us about preserving our credit. What are those mistakes that people in your coaching experience they just lack or go through on the credit side?
Okay. One thing to start off with, it's important to understand, and this is probably all things finance, it's a lot easier to not mess up our credit than it is to come back and fix our credit after we've made the mistakes. So if we are seeking to avoid certain things and mess up our credit, we're actually causing a lot more work than the work we were avoiding to begin with, right? So you're going to have some pain one way or the other. So the thing about maintaining good credit is you can't overextend yourself, right? Never take on more credit than you can easily pay back. And I do mean easily pay back. I think a lot of times we have to take credit on because of our family responsibilities. I totally get that. So if you're taking on credit because you have to feed the family, what can you do? You got to do something. But when we take on credit because we want to spend the weekend somewhere, or we want to buy that latest MacBook Pro or something like that, we're creating problems that we're eventually going to have to take care of later on down the road.
perfectly clear that. And also the importance to plan. The financial on the financial side, we gotta plan. We gotta have stick to our plan and our budget. How is that planning on your side? What do you recommend on planning?
Right. So planning is extremely important because nothing is going to happen without a plan, right? Nobody accidentally becomes financially successful, right? There's got to be a plan behind it. So the important thing, the first thing you have to do when you're doing your financial plan is understanding what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing, what is it that you're trying to accomplish. So people that say, I'm going to spend less, how do you do that? How do you power that thought with some real action when you don't have a reason why you want to spend less or spend more efficiently, budget better? Why are you budgeting better? So the first part of the plan is to think about why it is that you want to plan to begin with. What are the results you want? What are you trying to accomplish? And then work backwards from that plan to figure out what steps do I take today so that I can accomplish that plan. If you don't have the plan, you're not going to take the right steps. You're never going to really reach anywhere, financial or otherwise, right? This is why planning is so important.
Right. And actually, always when we have some advice on finance, always we hear about this emergency fund. And what is your take on the emergency fund to not be going so much on the side of the emergency fund? Your percentage, what are your take about this emergency fund, Richard?
Okay, so the emergency fund a little bit is dependent on your work, right? If you work for the federal government, your job is extremely secure, then you don't really need as much of an emergency fund because you're less apt to lose your job. If you are a contract worker and you can lose your job every year because every year you're renewing a contract, then your emergency fund needs to be larger. For the average person, you're probably looking at 6 months expenses is what you want to have as part of your emergency fund. The emergency fund is really not just to help you with emergencies. It is, you get some really good results psychologically having that much money set aside. In other words, it gives you this peace of mind that helps your whole life kind of flow better because you're not stressed out about your finances, you sleep better, you do everything else a lot better. So it's not just about having money to prepare for when something unexpected happens. It also helps us feel a lot more secure and helps us feel better about our finances. And so our whole life kind of flows a little better because of it.
Exactly, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's that. And actually we in I think mistakes when we talk about mistakes is that strategy. We gotta strategize on the debt that we're taking and avoiding traps. I think avoid those traps that the same economy, and right now with interest rates that are going up or are going down. What are your takes on that, Richard, on this side of the interest rates and how we can avoid traps on that side and being healthy financially?
Sure. So, of course, in terms of taking on debt, you never want to take on credit card debt if you don't have to, simply because those interest rates are always high. They're never, ever low. They're just higher or lower, but they're always high. When it comes to something like a mortgage, we all have to have a mortgage when we purchase our home. Most of us would have to. The thing about that is that there are better times to do home purchasing. Like right now, interest rates are really high, mortgage rates are really high. But the fact of the matter is, in the U.S., it's very easy to refinance. So if you find yourself having to purchase a home and you have high interest rate, be prepared to refinance. What we want to do when we're doing mortgages, that a lot of the problems that a lot of people ran into back like in the 2010 financial crisis was that they got variable rate mortgages, right? And these rates reset after so long and the rates went up, right? So you want to think about what kind of risk you're taking on when you're taking on that kind of credit, right? If you take fixed credit, you know your rates will never change, right? Your amount for your mortgage is always going to be the same. You're not going to have any surprises. I think people took in the variable rate because they thought they would end up with lower rates, or they'd save money, or they required less money coming up front. But those things tend to work to your disadvantage. In other words, there's no free lunch. And so when you're doing your strategy about how you're purchasing a home, how you're borrowing money, don't assume the best case scenario. When you're doing your risk assessment, always think about what the possibilities of what might happen. And if it's in the realm of possibilities, think, if it does happen, what's that going to mean to me? If it's a risk that I can easily surmount and say, okay, it's going to cost me an extra $200 a month, worst case scenario, I can afford that, that's fine. But if worst case scenario is $1,000 a month and you can't afford to make that happen, that's how people get themselves into a financial bind in terms of credit, and now their credit's ruined, right? Once you've ruined your credit, it takes a lot of work to fix it. So you want to make sure you're not taking on risks that you really can't handle when the risks actually show up.
Richard, when we talk about real estate, in your experience, what are those mistakes that people that doesn't have any knowledge on the side of real estate, on the side of investing and so on? What do you think are those pitfalls on the side of real estate as an investment, or as the main home that people do, the first step on the side of real estate? What do you think about that?
So the biggest problem with real estate is it's emotional for most people, right? So I'm getting ready to buy a new home. I'm emotional about it. So I don't really think through about what the financial implications of what I'm doing are going to be long term. People will pay more for a home than they really should because they're emotionally attached to it. Also, when we start home shopping, it's amazing how we don't think the perfect home is there. And the second home we look at ends up being the perfect home, and we feel this is an opportunity we can't pass up. Odds are, it is an opportunity you can pass up. Odds are there's going to be very many more opportunities available to you down the road when you're doing your home purchasing.
Yeah. Michael Zuber, it's a YouTuber. He says always make great offers. Don't miss up with offers that are not into the numbers. That's
correct. You need to know what you can afford.
Yeah.
You need to not be impatient. If it's not making the numbers work the way you want them to, and the thing is, you have to think about your numbers before you start home shopping. Think about what you can see, because if you don't do that and you find that home that you think is the ideal perfect home, all of a sudden you're going to try to make those numbers work. And you're going to think of some really crazy things about why it's okay to purchase a home that you technically can't afford.
I'm gonna tell you like a friend told me. It's like going. You gotta, if you wanna invest into real estate, you gotta go into the real estate porn every day and go into the numbers. That's it.
Right.
So
you have to know what the market's offering, right? Then you know what you're getting. Is that within what the market's offering, or is this some other home purchase? Our first home purchase, the first home purchase my wife and I made, was not a very good home purchase, right? We were impatient, impetuous. We thought it was something we couldn't pass up, right? So it's important to learn from those mistakes, but at the same time, you want to make sure that even if you buy the wrong home or don't buy it as well as you could, that it's not a financial mistake in the sense that you can't afford it, or that you end up not being able to make your mortgage payments or something of that nature, right? Because then it's damage that becomes very difficult to fix. So the main thing is, don't make home purchasing an emotional thing. Exactly. Know your numbers before you start shopping, stick to those numbers, and if they don't work, pass on it. Wait for the next one. Right. Don't take a PMI. If you're taking a PMI, getting that mortgage insurance, if you have to have private mortgage insurance, that means you technically can't afford that home, right? You can't afford the down payment. You can't afford the home. Not only are you paying for the home, interest rates, all that, but now you're paying an additional fee on top of that for the insurance, right? So that right there tells you that you technically can't afford the home you're buying. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I know it's hard to afford a home nowadays, right? But understand what you're getting yourself into, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I think. In my opinion, we gotta stick to the numbers and see if we really can do that, can afford that in our situation, because it can be. There's so many options in real estate. There's a house hacking. There's when you really can afford to do a good reparation to a property, it will be good. But you gotta have the right strategy, I think, no?
Right. You gotta think long term about everything. There's no reason to move into a new home, if your intent is not to be there more than 5 years, right? Because every time you switch from one home to another, you're losing money in closing costs, moving costs, and if we tend to be upgrading, then it tends to be costing us more. So in terms of long-term financial success, you want to move less. You want to buy a home that's affordable, live in there for as long as you can before you can upgrade to something else at some later point in time, possibly. But the ideal would be not to upgrade as much, right? Because every time you upgrade, it's costing you money.
Yeah, sure. That's really a point that we gotta consider. And about Richard, the investing in bonds and the stock market. What are your takes on that?
Right. So the biggest problem with investing is that the investing media wants to make it seem like this is a very complicated thing, and only through some very complicated means can people actually invest, make money with the stock market. 95% of all people should just be investing in index funds, in their 401ks or in an IRA, and just forgetting about it, right? There's no reason to make this more complicated than it needs to be. The media would have us believe that because this is how all these financial advisors make their money, right? All these different companies make their money from making it seem complicated, and we need their help to make it work. My thought is, if investing is not something you want to become an expert at, don't do that. Invest in index funds. There's a lot of good articles out there on the simplicity of a 3-fund portfolio or something of that nature, and just make it as simple as possible and then forget about it. People that feel like they're constantly needing to mess around with whatever their portfolio has in it will tend to lose money.
Right.
Keep it easy.
You know what you don't know. Also, in the side of the people that doesn't understand so well about the 401ks and the IRS, what are those difference between those, and what are your thoughts about our finance into those plans, is into the planning of the retirement and those government plans? What are your takes on that?
Okay. So the main thing for people to understand is, we push the 401k a lot today. The media pushes a lot, our companies push it a lot. The 401k or any kind of tax deferred plan means that you don't pay taxes on the money today. You get a tax break, you put the money into this retirement plan, it grows throughout your career. When you retire, when you get the money back out, now you pay your taxes. It's important to understand that it depends on what the taxes are when you put it in and what the taxes are when you take it out as to whether or not a 401k is even to your advantage, right? So if taxes are really high when you put it in and then taxes are really low when you take it out, you've actually made money, right? Because you've saved on real high taxes. And this is the principle that when you're working, your taxes are higher. And then when you retire, your taxes will be lower because you make less money. And then you would actually save money on the taxes. But if that's not going to be your scenario, it could vary, right? It could be different. Best case scenario, it's the same, and it doesn't make that much difference one way or the other. Your taxes are the same going in, the taxes are the same going out. There's no advantage to a 401k, right? So a 401k is tax deferred, an IRA, and those are company sponsored plans, right? A 401k is sponsored by your company. If you don't have a company that has a sponsored 401k, then you can do an IRA, which anybody can do by depositing. I think your limit this year is $6,500 a year, and it's tax deferred as well. The other option is to do something like a Roth, that's the tax advantage of the Roth is that you've already paid taxes on the money, right? So you pay taxes on your earnings, then you put it into your Roth, and then it grows tax-free. So when you take money out of the Roth, you never ever pay taxes again. You don't pay taxes on your money coming out because you've already paid taxes on it, and all the earnings are tax-free. Your best bet is the Roth, right? If the Roth works for you, that could be your best bet, even though I think that it's always to our advantage to have multiple account types, because this allows us to work how we take money out in retirement to our best advantage. And there's different ways that you can do that so it's to your advantage. So in retirement, you really want to be looking at having tax-deferred accounts, tax advantage accounts like a Roth, and then you want to also have something like taxable accounts, because taxable accounts are also tax advantage in the sense that capital gains are taxed at a lower rate than the standard income rate, right? So earned income is taxed higher. When you take money out of your 401k, it is taxed at earned income rates. So if it's in a taxable account, you're being taxed at capital gains rates.
Richard, the life stages on specific, on the side of the young adults, what are your takes on the planning and to get to the retirement? What are your take on that?
Okay. So the best thing about finances when you start young is that if you're consistent, you're going to get the results, right? So consistency is the problem. A lot of the people that I talk to, it's like, oh yeah, I started to do this, but then this came up and I didn't do it. And 4 years ago, this happened. And then 10 years after that, this happened. And now I'm trying to start all over again. So if we don't let things derail us, our consistency is the most important thing. So what we want to make sure is that we have a plan about how we're going to reach our goal, whatever our goal is for retirement, and then consistently apply what we said we were going to do to reach that goal and make that your priority. See, what makes you financially successful is to make your finances your priority, not the stuff that you want to accumulate, not impress other people, not anything like that. If your finances are your priority and your plan says, this is how much I save every single month for my retirement, then that is exactly how much you should save. You shouldn't say, oh, but this year I'm trying to get this new boat, and then because of that, I need to go ahead and save less for retirement, and after I buy the boat, then I'll go back to doing that, right? Mm-hmm. Now we're breaking the stride, and then it's going to be very difficult to get back into that stride. And so this is where people fall apart, and then years later, it's okay, I need to start up again because I lost my momentum. Don't lose your momentum. That's the most important thing.
That's right.
And have a plan, right? Know what you're trying to accomplish. Also, think about your priorities. When you're spending money, there's only going to be so much money to spend, right? You can't do everything. So what are your priorities?
Yeah, and actually talk with your partner. Always a good communication is important to stick with the plan and stick with the numbers, right?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I think the most important thing in financial success is your partner. You have to make money, no doubt. You have to have a career, you have to have a business, you have to make money. But if you're going to be financially successful and you and your partner are not in sync, it's going to be very difficult to happen. So you and your partner have to be in sync as to what you're trying to accomplish with your lives in order to make that work. If not, it's not going to work.
Also, in the side of taxes, Richard, what are those mistakes people do with the taxes and in connection with the home ownership or with the investment?
So as far as taxes, the biggest problem I see with people in taxes is that people spend money to save money, and ultimately it doesn't work that way. If I'm running a business, I can expense that and that'll save me on taxes. But at the end of the day, if you're spending money, taxes is a deduction. You don't get your money back. You only get a little bit of it back. So if I spend $500 on some business expense, so what if I can write it off? I'm only going to get 20% back on that. I'm not going to get more than that, right? Because it's only saving me on my taxes. You're better off putting that money into your investments or putting that money into your business than expensing it out on something that is just a way of me buying consumer products that I want and saying it's to my advantage because I can expense that. It's not to your advantage, right? Don't buy things because you're going to get some kind of a tax advantage on it. Buy things that you need, and if you get a tax advantage, great. But if you don't need it, don't buy it.
Yeah, when we talk about personal finance, in this case, young adults that are trying to take good steps on the money, it's easy to think about side hustle and entrepreneurship. Well, myself, I did an entrepreneurship with car rental. It was a crash. It was a crash actually because I buy a new car, and then this new car then it has a recall on it, and then I was not able to rent it, so it was a nightmare on that side. So I think everything that we do as a side hustle, as entrepreneurship, it has to be with our mindset and our plan, right, Richard? Because and our ability to manage our income in accordance to this side hustle or this entrepreneurship. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so to me, I think entrepreneurship and side hustles are extremely important if you want to secure your finances. I have never, ever not had a side hustle or some kind of side income to my main income. The main thing you want to make sure is that a lot of people are so busy trying to get out of their job that they make the side hustle a alternative to their job. They want to make the side hustle work so they can quit their job. That's not going to get you anywhere, right? So what you want to do is, if it one day the side hustle becomes enormous and it makes tons of money, yeah, quit your job. But always look at it in terms of, I am doing this as a side gig to make money to my primary job until it does something, not as a way to escape the job that I don't like. Because then people tend to pull the trigger too soon. They never make enough money when they do that, and now they're having a tough time making it financially because they quit their job too soon, because all they really want to do is quit their job, right? So side hustles are there for our advantage. Also, people like the idea of spending money to make money, because there's a lot of things online that says, oh, you got to spend money to make money. Well, there's some truth to that. But if you're spending $5,000 every time you start a new side hustle, you're not making any money. You're just spending money on starting a new side hustle and spending $5,000 on training, software, and I never spend a dime. My thought is, if I can't make money without spending any money, then that's not a good side gig for me anyways. Once it starts making money, then I can only use side gig money to improve my side gig. I can't bring my money into it. Now, if you've got an idea and you think, okay, I need $1,000 seed money for my personal finances to get this side gig going, and you make that decision initially, fine. That's part of your plan, do that. But people tend to kind of continually drain their current income to do a side gig that never ever makes any money.
Exactly.
This is about good financial decisions. This isn't about a great side gig, not a great side gig. It just doesn't make sense to take, and this is the whole robbing Peter to pay Paul principle, right? It makes no sense to do that, because ultimately it doesn't work.
Richard, a software or something that you really recommend not to get some mistakes on budgeting?
Okay. As far as budgeting, so the problem with budgeting is that it's very difficult to do, right? It's very difficult to track, and it's a lot of work, so people don't want to do it. So what you want to do is figure out how budgeting is easy for you. So for me, for example, the way I budget, I would recommend this for anybody who can make this work, is that I simply put my expenses into a different account. So if my budget, now you got to figure out what your budget is realistically, right? And that requires work. This is by tracking 1 month's expenses all the way through, writing them all down, seeing what you're spending your money on, and then deciding how you want to improve that budget. What you're going to try to reduce, what you're going to completely cut out. Once you have that figured out and you have a dollar amount, what I do is I have an expense account. It's a checking account strictly for my expenses. And every month I put in the exact amount of my budget. So if my budget's $5,000 a month, I deposit $5,000 a month. Now, if an emergency occurs, I'm going to have to take some action to put more money into that account. It's not going to be this very easy thing where I just keep on spending money out of the main account, and since there's money in there, I don't realize how much I'm spending. I'll find out if I'm spending over budget because there's no more money left and there's no money to spend, right? So you want to figure out how to control your spending in some way that doesn't require you to say, oh, I know I've spent too much on this topic, this category this month, so I'm going to quit spending. Nobody knows that, right? So you have to figure out a way to track that. Also, I would say don't try to track. Once you've figured out your expenses and you've got your budget made out, don't try to track everything. Track the items you're having trouble with. If you don't have trouble with excessively spending money on groceries, then don't track your groceries. Who cares? If your budget is $500 a month for groceries and you never go over, why track it? Track whatever you're spending too much on so you can quit spending too much on that money. This will save you time, and then it'll make you more likely to keep on budgeting because you're not having to do as much work.
That's right, Richard. And when we talk about financial advisors or coach, for you, what do you have in your experience on that side of people telling you, well, my financial advisor told me that or this? What are your takes on that? When to hire a financial advisor or coach, and choosing the right one to avoid those mistakes?
Yeah, so one of the biggest problems with financial advisors, of course, is these are people that are professionals at selecting securities, and so they're always going to make it, in my mind, more complicated than it needs to be. Don't get me wrong, you get a good financial advisor, that's to your advantage. The problem is how do you know which one's a good financial advisor versus one who is not? So my thought on is, if you want to have a financial advisor, go with the big companies, go with the Fidelity, go with the Vanguard, and get their help. Odds are they're going to put you into a robo-advisor anyways, and they're going to select 10 different mutual funds to put you in, which you won't understand what they're doing and what you're accomplishing with them. I think that's fine. It'll work long term, but to me, it's always a lot easier to just find somebody who's willing to help you do something a little more simplistic, because you want to make sure you understand what you're doing, not having to figure out what somebody else did, especially when you change advisors, then you don't know what was going on with all the funds they put you into, and you can't explain that to the next person who's going to try to help you, and then they start all over again, right?
Yeah.
So you're better off maybe going to a fee-only advisor and getting general advice about how you should put a portfolio together, what kind of funds you should purchase, and do it yourself. Let them guide you into starting an account in Vanguard or Fidelity or something like that, and then you have control over it, and then you just do the same thing year after year, because the thing about investing is it doesn't have to be complicated, right? So I think advisors are great. The main thing you want from a coach is help with the mindset stuff, right? So the whole thing about the problem with our finances, but we do make bad decisions with our finances sometimes. But the real problem is that we have all kinds of hang-ups about finances that keeps us from making good decisions or taking actions. The biggest thing I see with clients is that clients do not take action. In other words, they feel bad about the fact that they haven't been saving enough. They feel bad about the fact that they've blown their budget and now they don't do anything at all. It kind of gets worse, right? So the thing about finances is ignoring them only makes things worse. So you want to attack your finances. You want to make decisions and at least quit doing the things that's hurting you so that you're not getting into a deeper and deeper hole as time goes on, right? But the main thing to do is get your mindset right that says small steps, easy steps. And the thing is, I think sometimes people want to accomplish so much that they're setting their mind on saying, I've got to make $1 million. How do I make $1 million? And they're missing the easy steps that keeps you from being dead broke at 50, right? And yes, we all want to have the $1 million at retirement, but wouldn't it be better at least not to be dead broke because you were thinking so much of the big goal, that you didn't do the little stuff that would have easily gotten you halfway there without having to worry about getting the big score kind of a mentality, right?
Exactly. And in these financial advisors, when we're talking today, 2024, and the coaching about finance, what do you think about AI? When we talk about ChatGPT, Gemini, and Meta AI, you try to ask these tools, and that those are maybe helping people. Sometimes it's always it's better to have the take. What do you think about the difference between these AI tools and a human being coaching about finance on the personal side of finance?
Okay, yeah. So I think the whole AI is great. The good thing about that is it's a fantastic education tool. So I don't understand what a 401k. So then I start my session with AI. What is a 401k? And then I can drill down and keep on asking questions and keep on drilling down until I understand what I need to do. So to me, as a DIY kind of a person, I really feel that this whole do-it-yourself finances is the best route for most of us. We don't complicate it. We get a little bit of advice in the beginning if we need it. We can get it from AI. We can get it from wherever it's going to give it to us. At some point in time, you may want to get some kind of mentoring. Mentoring is a little bit different than just plain coaching, but at the same time, it's a sense of maybe you can't get AI to understand your personal situation and say, based on who I am, what kind of things can I do to expand my income potential, to what kind of investing might fit my personality. Let's talk through some different options that I might have. So it might be difficult to get AI to do that, but you might be able to get an individual coach or a financial advisor to kind of walk you through some of the options you might have or different things you might do. To me, it comes down to you do the easy part first. You set a plan in motion that's going to get you halfway there. You can probably do most of that yourself. You can get AI to help you figure out things that you don't understand. Keep it simple. And then when you've got this base plan working, it's kind of like this fire and forget. You don't worry about it again. But now you want to do some stuff above that. And now you start consulting other people maybe, or maybe you start watching videos about different topics. but you never remove this base plan that's going to guarantee a certain amount of safety for your future. And now we're adding on to the top of that, right? And that's where we can get advice from other people, other mediums, other things. But don't let too many people interfere with the base, simple plan, because people will say, oh, but you got to go into crypto and then you can make. So you take your base plan and all the money you have in retirement, you put it into crypto, and then you lose it all, right? I'm not saying crypto is a bad investment, but it should not be your primary path to retirement or financial independence.
Is don't put your all the eggs in the same basket. So
correct.
Yeah, it's that. What about the good leverage and bad leverage on the side of we were talking about entrepreneurship and side hustles and so on, but sometimes we can have a good leverage for some projects that are really motivated and really we are engaged with that. What do you think about those good leverage and bad leverage in the side of the financial mistakes that we're talking about right now?
Okay, so 99.99% of people should not be taking on leverage to make investments. Stock market, securities, investments of that nature, we should not be doing that. If you're asking yourself, should I take leverage for this investment or not? You don't know enough to be taking on leverage for that investment, right? Only the real
educated first.
Correct. So leverage is extremely dangerous. Even the professionals lose tons of money applying leverage to bad investments, right? So as regular people, we want to completely avoid that. So where do we apply leverage at? To ourselves. Either our education, that we can clearly see a benefit. This is what we're doing when we take on student loans to educate ourselves, is we're taking on leverage to leverage our education, because that's going to increase our potential of income down the road. Now, not all student loans make sense. Not all degrees make sense. So you still have to figure out what is a good strategy, what is a good option of what I'm doing. And then for business, of course, it totally makes sense. But remembering what I said earlier, let's not just dump a bunch of money into a business idea that may or may not work because we feel we just want to get rid of some other job or something like that. Leverage is great if applied correctly. Always use caution when applying leverage. And you have to make sure that that's money you can lose, right?
Yep, that's right. Richard, books, blogs, or podcasts that you recommend or have an impact on you or your strategy, Richard?
Yeah, I don't do that many websites anymore. For me, if you're an investor and you want to learn investing, Seeking Alpha is a pretty good site that I've always liked, good articles on that. My thought is, if you're just wanting to be a regular investor, but not get deep into investing, you just want to be good enough to do your own personal finances, something like Morningstar is probably a good place to get that kind of information, because I think they're more unbiased than, say, others. The other thing is that for me, I don't know, I mean, there's a lot of different books. The book that had the biggest impact for me was The Millionaire Next Door. So, I mean, this is a book I listened to repeatedly I did it on audio and I listened to it every year for the first 10 years after getting that audiobook, because it helps with mindset. This is what we're trying to do. Finances is, mindset, right? This is mindset. More than anything, it's mindset.
For me, the biggest, the richest man of Babylon was a great one for me. Richard, for you in your take, in your thoughts, COVID-19, the pandemic, for you, it changed the way people approach personal finance. For you, what do you think about that?
I don't know if it changed the way we look at personal finance. I think it changed the way we think about the whole work culture, income generating. In other words, when we look at finance, we've got to separate all the different little pieces. Income is one component, expenses are one component, investing and saving is another component in a sense, right? So the two components about expenses really didn't change much, other than the fact that people spent a lot more once we came out of COVID because they, stir crazy, let's go out and do some shopping. And investing shouldn't have changed any. But how we think about making money changed considerably. And what we have now is the opportunity of making money in a lot of different ways, because the whole sense of online income I think really exacerbated the process a lot, right? We moved a lot quicker about making money online, getting online jobs, working remotely, and I think all these things brought in a whole bunch of new opportunities. When we're thinking about financial independence, and we're not just thinking about making good financial decisions, we're talking about financial independence, you've got to make more money, right? Financial independence comes from making enough money that you spend a small portion of that to live, and you have a bigger portion to invest in either other businesses or into just stocks and things like that so you can increase your net worth. So that's what we really came out of that is I think it changed our mindset to say there's a lot of opportunities out here that we can take advantage of.
Richard, when we get savings, my mother or my mother, Carmen Sarache, always told me about the rainy days, always told me about our savings. But I always have this thought and this feeling. But what about inflation? What about inflation in our savings? What is your take on the inflation impacting our saving and this side of the equation when we right now in the United States we're talking inflation every now and then?
So inflation is a little complicated because inflation affects everybody differently. It depends on what we're having inflation on as to whether or not you individually are going to be impacted by inflation. So I think we need to not think about inflation as much as we do and just invest in things that produce good results. In other words, we cannot have money in savings accounts for our retirement, right? But people worry sometimes so much about inflation and am I earning enough money that they won't have an emergency fund in cash because it's not earning enough for inflation. It doesn't matter. You're going to lose money on that savings for inflation, but you need the emergency fund. And so don't think about inflation. Don't think about the fact that you're not earning as much as you could because the emergency fund is necessary. Now, once you have your emergency fund, don't worry about there's a lot of risk in the stock market because if you think that way and you don't invest in the stock market, simply, don't make it complicated, total stock index fund, something of that nature, you're not going to make money above inflation rate. And then in the long term, you won't have as much money for retirement as you would if you did do that, right? Don't complicate it. Don't think about how much is inflation versus how much I'm getting. The results are what they are. Inflation is what it is. What are you going to do differently if you figure out inflation is a little higher this year than last year? Are you going to invest differently? Are you going to complicate your investing based on a 1% increase in inflation? Especially since most of us don't know what to do anyways, right? Oh, inflation's up 1%. I need to earn 1% more in my investments. What do I do? What is the average person going to do with that? Take more risk?
Your mindset. Your mindset, I think, is essential to get where you want to go, Richard, and go ahead, go a step ahead. I think going one step and plan your life, your retirement, your stuff, and your numbers very well is a real good take, I think. So final thoughts, Richard, on these mistakes that we are going to avoid always in all time in our personal finances. Final thoughts, Richard, before we go to other places.
Okay, so to me, the biggest mistake we need to avoid is not taking action. So take action, right? Set your savings plan and then just don't worry about, I'm not sure what to do with the money. It doesn't matter. If you can save money consistently, you'll figure out what to do with the money later because the money will still be there for you to invest later. You don't have to know today. In other words, the idea of putting off savings until I know what I'm going to do with the money is ludicrous. You want to start saving today. You want to get that plan in place and then apply it consistently. Whatever you can save. I can only save 1% of my salary. Okay, 1% is your new goal. Every single month, 1% of your salary. Next year, you bump it up to 2%, then 3%. And this goal never changes. You never go backwards on this. It's always the minute I can do a little bit more, the minute I get a raise, up I go. And I never, ever change this. Continue to execute on that plan. And of course, you are trying to avoid making mistakes with credit, purchasing things you don't need, purchasing a mortgage that you can't afford, things of that nature. There's a lot of things to do to make your personal finances easy. But the biggest one is people regret is not starting today. Wherever you're at, start today, start your savings plan, and then go from there.
And then where can we find you, Mr. Richard Hedrick?
Yeah, financialstoic.com. Like I said, there's not much there, but you can contact me via that page.
Right, great. So we're 305 office. So thank you, Mr. Richard, for being here. And well, we got, that's all we got for today. Thank you for being there, people. And until the next time, thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye bye.
Bye.